Today we're going to be talking about Little Nightmares. And no, not Little Nightmares 3. I already made a video giving my thoughts on that game. Today we're actually talking about the first title in the Little Nightmares series game, because Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition, a remaster of the original game, just came out the same day as Little Nightmares 3. Now, I never played the original Little Nightmares games, 1 or 2, but I fell in love with the Little Nightmares 3 demo when that dropped, and I played Little Nightmares 3 on my Switch too, so it is the perfect time for me to hop into this remaster because I wanted more Little Nightmares. So today we're going to be going over my thoughts on Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition on the Nintendo Switch 2, but make sure you sub for more videos like this in the future. Let's get into it. Now, if you're someone like me and never played a Little Nightmares game up until Little Nightmares 3, or maybe you just haven't played a Little Nightmares game at all, what is this series? Little Nightmares is a series about confronting your childhood fears. You venture out into these mysterious and creepy locations to sneak, hide, and run from twisted versions of adults while solving puzzles and doing some mild platforming along the way. Now, Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition follows the character named Six, a small child in a bright yellow rain jacket who is trying to escape the Maw, a massive boat full of horrors. Now, let me tell you, these games have a perfect way of providing these spooky tones and themes without ever being so scary and over the top with its horror themes that it would push people off and maybe not make them want to play these games. The eerie quietness you experience throughout the game due to its lack of dialogue is ominous and allows you to hear every little detail while you play. And this ranges from boards creaking under your feet, which will alert enemies to your location, to rain hitting the ground next to you and adding this eerie vibe. And while I say that these games aren't too scary, they definitely still have some scarier elements to them. There are these grotesque adult-like creatures that will chase you all over, and the developers are masters at providing moments of tension, making you feel incredibly nervous as creatures search for you, with almost getting caught, but never quite getting to that point. It just adds this perfect level of, oh my gosh, they're right there. Are they gonna get me? And then they don't, and it's just, there's constant moments like this throughout the game that just really seal in that like anxiety ridden feeling you get, you know, when you're watching a horror movie and you're expecting a jump scare. They constantly have those moments where you have that anxiety and you're anticipating something to happen, but it doesn't quite get there. And there's also plenty of chase sequences, which everybody loves in these horror things, that also add to that sense of tension. Running from the monster and trying to figure out what's in front of you and what you need to do in order to get away from that monster before it catches up to you is something that happens constantly throughout this game, and is something that I personally really enjoy. I love having those moments of having to go and try and figure things out before the monster catches me, and this game has a lot of trial and error. A lot of times you're going to have to get it on your second go because you didn't quite catch what you needed to do the first time around. But again, I really like this because it's kind of like, okay, now I know what to do. I have that moment of tension. Now I can get away from the monster and then continue on with the game. And I like these moments a lot. So what does this version of Little Nightmares feature? So this game, Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition, includes Little Nightmares, the base game featuring Six and their story, as well as the Secrets of the Maw expansion pass, and all of this is with 60 frames per second boosts, higher resolution, and improved visuals. And after testing this, I can confirm that all of this is 100% true. This game runs at a crispy 60 frames per second, and honestly, looks even better than Little Nightmares 3 does on the Nintendo Switch 2. Little Nightmares 3, when docked on a 1080p 60Hz monitor, looked a bit sluggish and even has this almost hazy effect to it, and some frame dips happen here and there. Overall, Little Nightmares 3 is very smooth, especially in handheld mode or while playing on a 4K monitor with a higher refresh rate, but it definitely had some noticeable issues on those lower end displays. But Little Nightmares 3 Enhanced Edition has none of these frame issues or that hazy feature or any of those slowdowns. It was just a buttery smooth experience the entire time that I was playing it. Now, when I was doing my testing for Little Nightmares 3 specifically, I found that playing the game handheld was overall a better experience. Playing Little Nightmares 3 handheld made the game look better visually, but also had a much smoother frame rate experience, keeping it consistently at 60 frames per second. However, with Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition, this gameplay experience was the exact same regardless of if you were playing docked versus if you were playing handheld. It was still that silky smooth 60 frames per second with fantastic visuals, so this game is perfect whether you prefer playing the game docked or handheld. Now, after playing Little Nightmares 3, there was one thing that I really enjoyed about that particular game, and that was the load times. In Little Nightmares 3, that game's load times were practically non-existent, where I didn't even have enough time to pick my phone up and check the time between dying and getting back into the game. However, in Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition, this is not the case. The load times are still relatively quick. However, the thing that I noticed about this game is that the load times are significantly longer than they were in Little Nightmares 3. So when I was dying and having those trial and error moments where I didn't quite get what the game was trying to get me to do, I die and have to reset. Those instances were taking quite a bit longer, meaning that I was getting a little more annoyed every time I failed one of these more trial and error sections of the game. And this isn't a huge gripe. It's not something that really ruined my experience playing this game, but it is worth mentioning that these load times are quite a bit longer in this game, which is a bit frustrating when it is a game that is full of situations of trial and error where you may not get it on your first, second, or even third time, but once you do get it, you can move on. But having those instances where the load times are a bit longer to respawn doesn't feel particularly good. So overall, I'm really enjoying Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition on my Switch 2. I think it's a fantastic experience. However, I do have some gripes with this particular game, and they have less to do with the actual gameplay of Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition and more with how this game actually launched. So first, let's talk about the pre-order bonus situation. So for those of you who did not know, on other platforms aside from the Nintendo Switch, this game was simply included as a pre-order bonus for anyone who pre-ordered Little Nightmares 3 digitally. They also received a copy of Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition for free, and I really don't know why Nintendo Switch 2 was excluded from this. In my head, what makes sense is that there is a already existing base version of Little Nightmares on the original Nintendo Switch. It's Little Nightmares Complete Edition, and Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition is only available on the Nintendo Switch 2, which could be the reason that they excluded this, because Little Nightmares 3 is also available on the Nintendo Switch, not just the Switch 2. But the thing I think is super weird about this is they could have simply included that base version of Little Nightmares Complete Edition for Switch 1 as a pre-order bonus for the digital version of the Switch 1 Little Nightmares 3. And then people that pre-ordered Little Nightmares 3 digitally on the Switch 2 would have got the Enhanced Edition. That could have been a very simple solution. So I feel like this is kind of a swing and a miss for the Nintendo Switch platform specifically regarding this game. It just feels like a complete oversight as far as just giving the original game, and no matter which version you got, giving that original game as a pre-order bonus just feels like something that should have happened, considering it happened on literally every other platform. Now, the second issue I have with this game is what I was talking about earlier. There is already a version of Little Nightmares Complete Edition on the Nintendo Switch that released in 2018. However, there is no upgrade path at all for those who already owned Little Nightmares Complete Edition on the Switch 1 to then get the Switch 2 version. And I find this to be a massive miss, considering the fact that Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition is coming in at the exact same price on the eShop as the Switch 1 Complete Edition comes in at, which is $30. This lack of an upgrade path just doesn't make any sense to me at all, especially when so many other games have it. Like Yooka-Laylee Replay that literally just released on the Switch 2 is offering a discount to players who already own the original Yooka-Laylee game. So I feel like not providing some form of upgrade path, whether it be a free or a paid one, is just a massive miss on Bandai Namco's part with the release of Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition, especially when so many games are doing it. So my final thoughts on Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition on the Switch 2 is that this game is fantastic. As someone who's never played the original Little Nightmares game, I am super glad that I can hop in and experience this game with these graphics that are visually impressive on the Switch 2, the frame rate that is buttery smooth, and the lighting that is absolutely fantastic in this upgraded version of the original Little Nightmares. And all of this can be said whether you're playing the game docked or handheld. This game just looks and runs great. If you're a fan of horror games or spooky season in general, I highly recommend the Little Nightmares series as a whole, and with this game coming in at $30, it is a fantastic cheaper game to add to your library this spooky season. It has plenty of creepy and horror elements while not being so much so to deter people from actually giving it a fair shake. It's just that perfect level of creepy that can get you in and give you that sense of, oh, it's Halloween and I'm enjoying myself kind of mentality versus, you know, I'm terrified and I need to shut the game off and turn the lights on. However, what I will say is that I feel bad for people who own this game on the Switch 1 already and have no way to upgrade to the actual Switch 2 version of this game. That is a massive bummer. And honestly, I would look up and just see if the Switch 2 is natively running the Switch 1 version of Little Nightmares better just due to the improved hardware. And if that is the case and you already own the Switch 1 version, I would say this is a skippable game for you. There's no reason, if the Switch 2 is already running Little Nightmares Complete Edition better on the Switch 2, that you need to buy Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition. And unfortunately, that's just the case. Despite you may not have the better resolution, the better graphics, the better frame rate, as long as the game is running a little bit better or at least more consistently on the Switch 2, I would say skip this one if you have it on Switch 1. But that is going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition in the comments below. Are you planning to pick this up, or are you playing Little Nightmares 3? If so, check out my review for that one as well. I just reviewed it yesterday, so let me know your guys' thoughts on that in the comments below as well. But like I said, that is it for this video, guys. And if you did enjoy, leave a like, comment, and subscribe because it helps me out, helps the video out, and helps the channel out immensely. But until next time, peace.